Ladies and gentlemen, it brings me great joy to welcome in Scott Morgan, the president of Bruner, where I am employed at. Scott, thank you so much for coming on and joining us and for reaching out and wanting to be a part of it. So thank you, and how are we doing this evening?
Doing great, Derek. Thanks again for the invite. I appreciate it. I look forward to it. It's some casual conversation. Just don't grill me like a Senate subcommittee, and I'll feel just fine about it.
I did send out a shameless plug email to a couple friends at Bruner and said, hey, like if you're not busy tonight, just to let you know, Scott's coming on, and I'm going to grill him with the toughest questions I got. So just to give you a heads up.
Thank you for that.
Very much, but I know I introduced you to Josh, our producer, Greg, our co-host here. Not sure if you were able to speak to him when I ran out.
For a bit, yeah.
I've given them a little insight, but Scott, give us like a quick elevator pitch of who you are and your background, and then we'll dive straight head
Such a
first.
manager thing to do, by the way, the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch.
Oh,
See,
my
I'm
God.
using terminology here, Scott.
Yeah, we're both in marketing, right? So we're using the buzzwords already. But yeah, real simple. I've been involved in marketing my whole life, ever since I got into the workforce after college, and then I did grad school later on. Moved to the agency side with what was then called Blattner Bruner, and we bought out the original partner, and now there's three of us that are partners in the business now, and been there for a long time. Love it. Played a lot of sports in my youth and or my ute, as it's been said, and cousin Vinny. But yeah, that's my elevator speech.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I want to dive headfirst into the topic that you had sent over to discuss, because I think it'll open up the doors for a bit of a casual conversation and make Greg be able to, know you a little bit more. And one of the things that you had brought up is, the original social networking. And I'm always, when we talk at work, infatuated with the stories you have for the people you met and the connections that you have, just, because it's very organic and it's very real. But when you said in the original social networking, with that type of thing, I mean, that takes so much precedent over top of being able to communicate digitally in today's world. But obviously we're stuck at home. It's kind of a gray area right now that's being missed out on in the world, right?
Absolutely. One example I give to people is I happen to have a daughter who's one of those people that graduated in 2020 and from college, and started her career in management consultancy. And she gets the laptop through the mail and doesn't really meet anyone face to face. So her interactions are just like ours right now. But it's critical. I think it's just human nature to want to connect, and I think that also plays such a big role in business, because personal relationships tend to yield other things, right?
Yeah.
They have to be mutually beneficial for them to be maintained. And, I learned a lot, even growing up from different people when I was younger, and then got into business, about the importance of those social connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the things, the reason that I really sent that question to these two guys is because every single person we have on Thoughts to the Bench came from my life before we made Thoughts to the Bench.
Yeah.
Josh and I were coworkers and very good friends before. Greg was one of the best friends I made at Slippery Rock the first year. Ryan, who designed a lot of our clothing, was his roommate in college. One of the guys we call the ranking is my cousin. So the ability to pull from people that I clicked with instantly, I mean, 3 years down the road, we would not even be a show or a company if it wasn't for me being able to meet people like this. So the organic opportunity is just there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Derek, you and I have talked about this topic, but I know John Calipari well. We grew up together. We went to high school together. We went to grade school together. And when you talk about the topic of social networking, I mean, this guy, what makes him such a great recruiter, he learned very early on. It's part of his DNA.
Yeah.
But to offer a little glimpse of that, I think, are you guys all from the Pittsburgh area?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have you are from
Greenfield.
and Josh is from
Butler.
and
Wow, way far north.
well, Josh went to Robert Morris, and Greg and I went to Slip Rock, and then I went down to Point Park. So you got
Well, okay, this is perfect segue. This is a Robert Morris story. So for most of my life, I've lived in a couple of different places, DC, Pittsburgh, but most of my formative years were in Pittsburgh. And my parents still live there today. It's if you know Robert Morris, they live right near the back gate, what we used to call the back gate of Robert Morris.
Oh, yeah.
Is an access that everyone likes to use. Well, my mother is still out there on the road. If you see her when you're driving by, she's telling you to slow down.
That's
but
most
anyway,
likely Josh driving past too fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to hometown pizza, okay?
Yeah,
I know it closes
right?
at 2, but I got to get there on time.
I know, that's the excuse I always use too.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, just know my dad is a Marine. I don't care if he's in his 80s; he can still kick your butt. So just watch out for
Never
that.
won a fight, Scott. It wouldn't even be close. Trust me.
Yeah.
So, and I
you,
bring
Denny.
up that whole geography because growing up, we would all hang out at Robert Morris because there used to be outdoor basketball courts,
Yep.
which is now a parking lot, but there was
Yeah.
tennis, basketball right next to one another outside. And then we had a sandlot baseball field right next to the outdoor basketball courts, kind of facing John Jay Center, which was the original Colonials gym. So I bring it up because Cal would come up to play baseball with us, but I swear after about 5 innings, if it was July or August, if 5-Star Camp was there, and I don't know if you're familiar with 5-Star, but 5-Star used to attract all the top high school recruits. They'd get invited. It was an awesome thing because you would have every significant college coach there.
Yeah.
So, you'd see Bobby Knight, you'd see Wooden was up there, Larry Brown was up there, all those guys back in the day. Well, the thing is, John Calipari would leave the game and start talking to people on the court. And I swear within no time, he was a ball boy when we were in like 6th grade. And as he got into, we called it junior high back then, he's running some of the drills. So social networking, guess where he got to connect early on with all of those guys. So by the time he played hoops in college, he went to Wilmington, UNC Wilmington, then he transferred to Clarion. He had made all kinds of connections. So he did that early on. I think he got hired at I don't know if he was at Pitt or at Kansas first. I can't remember. But
Greg?
I think he was at Pitt.
Greg's
maybe?
our resident encyclopedia of sports knowledge, and he's a massive Pitt fan.
You guys can tell me, right?
Yeah, I think it was
So,
Pitt.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I learned is just to, make the connection, maintain the connection. I mean, it has to be authentic, and you have to do things that probably give more on the first part of it if you really expect to get something out of it as time goes on. But it certainly helped him because he did get his first job through those connections. Then he knew all those guys. And then fast forward years later, I'm at home one day visiting from Washington, D.C., and there's a knock on the front door. Well, it's Cal with Popovich.
Oh my God.
Okay.
And he's like,
What?
Casually.
Yeah. So I hear him say, I hear him in the foyer talking to my mother, and he's like, do you mind if I park here? I want to, I don't want to go through the front gate. I want to just walk up because the courts are right here. He was going up for 5-Star, right? And so my mom's like, well, Scott's home from DC. And so my dad and I walk up with those guys. We're, BSing and we're meeting everyone else out there on the court. But that's kind of the relationship he and I've had for a long time. It really hasn't been as much about his business, the business of NCAA D1 basketball in Kentucky. When we go there to visit, it's usually a group of us. It's just like you guys. You know each other from college days or wherever. We've known each other since we were little kids. And so we end up telling stories, about growing up. We don't talk about, how's that new freshman doing or how's the whole team doing because they're all new guys. We didn't meet these guys last year. These are all new guys,
Well, and that leads me into then, Scott, ask you about, obviously you and I've had multiple conversations, but the one that I never got to ask you was, did you watch and what did you think of the Coach Calipari 30 for 30? Because I personally thought it genuinely painted him in a light of he cares so much about his kids. And that spoke to me. And a lot of people talk about the transition of one and done.
It was way more flattering than I honestly was expecting it to be honest with you.
Even in his UMass days.
Yeah, even then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what makes him so effective. He's genuine. He's authentic. I mean, think about this. He doesn't have to invite a bunch of guys from high school down to sit behind the bench and then take us to his home and wine and dine us and go into the Joe Kraft Center and get to watch practices and clown around and go into the locker room. He doesn't know. Why does he have to do that? And not just once. And then come back to Pittsburgh and hang out and go to a Pirates game together in the casino. And, so my point is that's all genuine and authentic, and he cares about people. And I think if you were to ask him, I can't speak for him, but I think he'd tell you that what he gets the most out of is changing people's lives. So when he goes into a household and he sees someone that's, let's just say economically disadvantaged, but the son has tremendous athletic talent. He can tell the story of how he's helped other people like them and talk about how he'll change their life. That's special when you can do that.
And who was the because the documentary spoke a little bit to it. Who was the big name that was at UMass?
I think it was Jamal. Oh no, not UMass. I'm sorry.
Marcus Camby.
Marcus Camby. Thank you very much, Scott. But that was the name that was tied that was so aggressively to his young career and Marcus Camby isn't just going to go to any team. Like that was one of the best players in the country, and he believed in John. And so I was just curious in your perspective of it, because it really, in my mind, did paint him in a good picture, something that I thought was genuine.
Well, there, like anything else, there's an establishment in the NCAA. Okay.
Yes.
And I mean, there's certain things I can and can't say, but I will say this much, that a lot of the goody two shoes coaches are very protected by the NCAA.
Yes.
And they have the establishment. And I think John's in that establishment now. I don't think he wasn't always. So there are things that go on everywhere. I know one thing. He is everything I've seen and talked to him about. He is always very on the up and up.
Yeah,
always. And we know college sports. We know what happens, but you got to be careful, especially when people are looking over your shoulder all the time.
Oh, for sure.
So, but he's not only a good guy. He's smart. We talked about, Derek, you and I, about marketing. He was a marketer. He went to Clarion, and he said to his dad, "Hey, Dad, can you lend me a little bit of money?" Now, John didn't come from a lot of money, nor did I. In fact, my dad was an airline mechanic. His dad refueled the aircraft. So Vince and my dad were buds. And he gets to Clarion, and he says, "Hey, this rent is incredible. It's crazy." He said, "Could you lend me some money? I want to buy basically a trailer." And his dad said, whatever. He made it happen. But what I don't think his dad even knew, John not only bought one, he bought two trailers. So he rented one out that paid for both and the cash that he owed his dad. And he ended up making money. When he was done with school, he sold it. So, he's astute. He's street smart. But he studied marketing, so he learned something from that.
Well, that makes sense too, because if you think about it, like when we were in college and all that, like back then the rent there was probably something like, oh, how can I afford this and all that. Like thinking back on it, like rent in college is like dirt cheap compared to what it is now.
Yeah, it's a growing pain of you're in there and you're like, all right, well, we're taking out this loan for this, collegiate experience, what it comes down to. And there are some people that, I went to Slippery Rock and Point Park with selectively that looked at that situation as kind of a financial benefit, and how can I do that? And a lot of them moved into real estate and moved into the type of realm that's into the Airbnb type of thing now with social media and all those. But that's unbelievable. Like, that's a really cool story, and it just shows to his character the entire way through, where it's like, I'm going to make the most out of the situation. So
I'm sure a coach from Duke probably didn't do that.
You never know, man. It's possible.
Very insightful observation. So anyway, here's another part of that. Let's call it the 6 degrees thing, right? Mm-hmm. So then my daughter starts to play basketball in high school, and very proud of what her team had done, because they went from 3-17 to 23-4 for last year. So then that was pretty much the same team. A lot of great talent. In fact, one of the girls is still playing at Penn State. I think she's a sophomore.
Oh, wow.
Tremendous athlete. She just hit the game winner for Penn State the other night. It was on ESPN.
No way.
Yeah. But in that whole experience of my daughter playing high school basketball, I start talking to her teammates' families, because that's what happens. You start to hang out with those people, right? Because it's a common bond. Well, so her teammate's father was quite a basketball player at Keystone Oaks. He's got the trophy case. You see his name all over it. Yeah. I don't know where he played college ball, but we started talking about, college, or not college, but high school basketball. And he said, I went to 5-star camp. I said, really? And so he knew Calipari, and so did the other dad, and played against him. And I said, well, when were you there? And he said, well, here's my claim to fame. He said, I got the Mr. Hustle Award at 5-star.
Oh, no.
And he said, but someone else got the MVP. And I said, well, who was that? He said, Michael Jordan.
Weird.
I would hold that Mr. Hustle Award over Michael Jordan's head until I died.
Yeah,
he's
not going to appreciate that at all.
He didn't
whatsoever.
beat out Michael Jordan with effort? That's weird.
Natural talent wins many times.
Huh.
That's funny.
So
I am screwed.
In your a lot of us are in our later days.
Yeah, it's okay.
When it comes to your fandom, Scott, what's your favorite sport to watch? I mean, I know you're a Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah, because you mentioned this too. Like you have been around the country and you've essentially had fandoms for a lot of different teams. So
I said you've appreciated sports when you were in DC, and
Yeah.
I know you said you live in California, and you're just a guy that does appreciate. Real quick, Scott, not to interrupt you, and I apologize for this, but Dennis just donated 500 bits and said because Scott seems like a really cool guy, I would love to get to know over a cup of coffee. And that is from By the Wayside Coffee, who is our sponsor, who is a coffee truck.
Wow,
so,
Denny.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Denny, for the
God, I love the
500
sponsor.
bits
Denny.
is the currency on Twitch, Scott, just to give you
I
some
love it. Thanks.
insider there.
Yeah.
But your personal fandom, what's your favorite sport? Do you have players that you really tune into?
I've always liked football. I've gravitated more towards NCAA stuff now, probably because, my daughter went to a Big Ten school, and I just kind of glummed onto that.
Unlike
And
our
Penn
producer.
State what's that?
Where did she go? Was it Penn
State.
State? Yeah. So
Unlike our
so
producer,
we have
yes.
we have a running joke on the show, just so you're aware, Scott, that Josh is a very big fan of Penn State. Greg is a very big fan of Pitt, and neither went to their respective schools.
Well, so I could tell you many stories about my wife's family, many of whom are dentists. Okay, so I'm talking siblings. So back in the day when I was dating her, you still had that Penn State game,
Yep.
right? So half the family had gone to Penn State undergrad, but almost all of them had gone to Pitt for dental school, and then some went to Pitt undergrad. So that was, if you remember the old T-shirts, "Piss on Penn State" and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
right? That would be in the living room. So anyway, you asked me the question. I do like all sports. I mean, I am probably more of a football guy because I played it up through college or into college at least. And when I moved to DC after college, alumnus from Moon was Rich Malott. He was older, but he played football, and I actually wore his number by the time I got up there into high school. He was a Penn State hero linebacker, got drafted by the Redskins, played in 2 Super Bowls for them, started. So he was part of that defense under Joe Gibbs. So I became a Redskins fan when I lived there, was in FC City, and never became a Capitals fan, but was a Redskins fan. And then have always followed the Steelers, so big in football. But in the era when I grew up, you played every sport. So you were a fan of every sport.
Yeah, very much.
My hometown team, I followed. It was the Pirates, the Penguins, and the Steelers as it is today, So
I do have so now that you mention it, and I want to pull it back into your marketing advertising brain, do you find it weird that the Washington football team did not select a name or branding before the
that's
season?
a great question.
I was gonna
I'm
ask that.
Were
fascinated.
you?
Damn,
Because
yes.
I mean, that's a really, you bring up, and I think it was the Troy Aikman recent in a game had mentioned Redskins live on air when the team no longer is that name. But Troy Aikman obviously played a decade worth of football against that team.
And in fairness, though, like there's so many other analysts that still do that as well.
100%,
Because it's just like it's common knowledge at that point too. It's very hard to kind of get out of a habit of doing that.
Yeah, I hear you. Plus, Aikman's had several concussions, as I recall. That could have been part of it. But
That is accurate.
yeah, I think the issue there is, Dan Snyder never wanted to change the name. He was adamant. I mean, he fought it for years. I think part of it is like, hey, I'll show you. I'm going to drag this out as long as I can. And kind of rub your nose in it.
Not the best time in this climate, unfortunately, to do that.
It isn't, but you know what? He could be one of those guys that really doesn't care.
Yes.
Because I think they had some front office issues with.
And some serious front office
Yeah,
issues.
that got leaked this
diversity
year.
issues
Yeah.
and whatever you want to call it. And so I don't know. I don't know him personally. I just I know what I have experienced and what I've read. So I don't know. I guess that's why.
Yeah, there were a couple names tossed out. that were really
Red
interesting.
Wolves.
And I think that the big one, the Red Wolves and
The
Red
Red
Tails.
Tails, yeah.
But I think that they just didn't want to rush into it because you have to assume that this name is going to be the forever name.
Right.
Like whatever you're selecting is going to be. So it kind of was
I've
weird
heard
that
Warriors
they're just
too,
the
but
Washington
yeah.
football team, but I understood their issue not to dive
Weirdly
into
enough,
those
I remember their president, like, I can't remember his name either, but he even talked about the idea of maybe keeping the Washington football team, kind of like, essentially,
I kind of enjoy it.
kind of like the idea of what soccer clubs do now, especially in America, where they, instead of going towards, like, the actual, like, you
It's
know,
the city.
gimmick type thing, it's now a city, it's now like a football club, the FC type thing, which would be interesting if they did that.
And Scott, we actually had a question come in that I would, again, like to get your perspective on. Just knowing your background, what more could, and this is a little bit of a turn left, but what more could the XFL have done to ensure the league didn't fold, in your opinion?
They didn't necessarily fold. It was
Greg
just
is a large wrestling fan, so
it
he's
was
a large
lit.
XFL fan, Scott,
I'm not talking about the original XFL, but this new XFL is literally because of COVID. It is not their fault.
But
Just
these
throwing it out there.
secondary leagues, I guess we can lump into one conversation, Scott.
I'm a huge secondary league fan of anything,
Well,
by the way.
I don't know. I thought The Rock brought it back. It was going to be alive.
Yes, he
Sure.
did.
Fine. Don't worry about it. Personally, if you're asking me as a marketer, I mean, I think there's a certain amount of saturation, a certain amount of, white space to play in out there. There's so many sports now, and there's such overlap. And now we're all dying for more of it to be able to participate in it as a fan, right? But I don't know. I just think I don't know. I've never examined the economics of it to see what it really takes to run a team.
Yeah.
You're not paying the same salaries in the XFL as you are in the NFL, of course. But it's a heavy investment, I'm sure, up front to get things going. And,
Oh, yeah.
they make their money on sponsorship. So as soon as you can grow that brand, it probably pays itself off. But I don't think it's day one or year 1 or year 2. So there's economic considerations, obviously.
Yeah. And from just the sports aspect, we always want there to be a secondary league because there's certain guys that aren't getting, a chance, or there's certain players that I know are good, just not good enough for the league.
Yeah.
One of the big names.
So Derek, you're not a baseball fan? We have a secondary league right here.
Wow.
So
I thought you were a big baseball fan.
I am a massive, colossal, gigantic baseball fan. The only problem is that I just don't know anything about baseball, Scott.
Scott, I have a Pirates tattoo, so like that, like just
He
hurts
does
me.
from the drug. Isn't it the drug era?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Yeah, he has.
Did Dale Barra sign it?
No, did not.
Dale Barra reportedly was doing coke deals with the mascot.
Yes, that is
Wait.
accurate. That is accurate. I have heard that story. Yeah.
The only crazy drug story I know with the Pirates, in all seriousness, is the Doc Ellis story.
No,
think that's
well,
the
the
only
Doc
one
Ellis
I'm
story is
aware
great, but the whole drug trial thing, like the actual backstory was that the original mascot of the Pirate Parrot, he was their coke dealer.
Wow,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where the whole drug trial thing came from.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, I shouldn't. I'm a big Pirates fan, actually. I love baseball. It's a little bit slow, now because life has speeded up so much, and you're so used to things happening in vignettes, and then you sit there for 3 hours watching
Scott, I'm glad you brought that up, by the way, because I think that's something that's kind of a new trend right now in baseball, is the whole idea of trying to speed the game up and trying to essentially attract the younger audience now. Baseball is one of those things that it's a legacy sport. It's like if you're not kind of born into it or anything, it's really hard to get into. Like, essentially, how would you try to maybe push the idea of baseball onto a newer generation now? Because it's really tough now in today's environment, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't thought a whole lot about it, but I think what they're doing in trying to speed it up is good. I've heard about less innings being played. It's just, but part of the beauty of that sport, if you're really a fan of it and a student of the game, is all those nuances and the things that slow it down, make it a kind of an intellectual.
Absolutely.
I agree. Yes.
So it might just attract a different kind of fan. I mean, if you love hockey, maybe you're not a big baseball fan because
Josh.
Josh is a resident hockey guy, and he tried to act shocked, but also, Scott, he bought his LA Dodgers hat about 2 weeks
Meanwhile,
ago.
he's
with a grain of salt.
Meanwhile, he's a Cubs fan allegedly. So this is like
wow.
It's a whole world
so
of
much shade
award.
being thrown.
I do want to say real quick before we get into the shade being thrown, Scott, there were 2 comments that came in our chat that I want to read to you. One is from Andrew Barrowman, who said, "What is up, Scott? I hear Bruner misses me. Hope you're doing well." And the other one was from Eric Bueno, who said, "What is up, Scott? My favorite president ever." So Eric Bueno and Andrew Berriman.
Hey, I miss those guys. When you talk about being a fan, I'm a fan of both those guys.
Scott,
unfortunately.
And,
Berriman I can understand.
Bueno's been he's the resident troll on Thoughts on the Bench, and all for the right reasons. He's from Cleveland. He knows how to get under skin. He's very smart, so he enjoys it.
He's also really goofy looking.
Those guys is Andrew would be fantastic as a linebacker, and Bueno could be a
kicker,
a long snapper.
Did you know that Berriman played wide receiver?
He's a basketball guy. Who did?
Berriman.
Oh, I believe that.
Really? Okay. In high school, he told me, and obviously it was high school, and he went to Central Michigan, so it was like I know you didn't really play, but yeah, he's back in the jet. But yeah, no, Berriman. I mean, he could play linebacker in any league I'm throwing.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got the physique, and Eric. I mean, he can get. I don't know what his vertical is, but I could see him as a forward in basketball.
He's
he
about
can't
6'6".
jump. He would just have to stand under the hoop and collect rebounds. There's no way he's getting any vertical.
There's been he joins us on Monday night. We play a game called Among Us. So Eric is an absolute gem, and we're still in very close touch. So that's great.
Wait, is Berriman a Bronco? Western Michigan?
Or Western Michigan, yeah.
He's a Bronco?
He's a Bronco from Western Michigan.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Row the boat, baby.
Great hockey school. I mean, baseball. What?
Anyways, last question in all honesty I have for you, Scott, is who's your favorite player right now in any sport, any realm? Because and I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I'm going to bring up a quick story my dad told me. So Scott, don't fire me right now, okay? My dad told me that you're getting old when you buy the jersey of someone younger than you, and I just found out that Bud Dupree is technically a month younger than me the other day. So that's when I realized that I was getting old, is that Bud Dupree is technically a month younger than me.
But you didn't technically buy the jersey, did you?
We don't talk about her on the show, Greg.
By the way, just say.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of players who've torn their ACLs and come back. So hopefully he comes back strong.
100%.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about this. I probably have. I'm a fan of athletes in different sports.
Yeah.
This is going to sound as crazy as your Jersey story, but I got to know Lindsey Vonn through an experience skiing out west. Okay?
Just the name drops from you.
Wait,
are
wait,
Lindsey Vonn.
Wait.
My mother thinks I have a crush on her.
I have a crush on her.
Tell your mother we all have crushes on her.
I mean,
and her husband, PK Subban,
and possibly ex-boyfriend in a weird way too. Just saying.
So I do want to say, Scott, to preference your story, I did find out about your friendship with Coach Calipari through a picture you were showing me for a different reason. And I looked at it and I said, that's Coach Cal. And he said, yeah, that's Coach Cal. And so you do have these relationships that jaw drop us, but your whole point is they're genuine and they're
So here's the thing, though, and I'll keep this quick because we got to wrap. But it was serendipitous that my daughter and we do a dad-daughter ski weekend.
Awesome.
It's a way to bond, and because otherwise she's shopping with her mother, and there's nothing else to do. But we had this setup where I supported Lindsey Vonn's foundation. I got to meet her. I didn't ski with her, but my daughter skied like 4 hours.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
And I found out what a sweetheart she is. So she became a favorite of mine because she's so down to earth.
Yep.
A good person. She's beautiful, very dynamic.
Huh.
But it was so cool to be texting my daughter and saying, "Hey, I'm over here in the back bowls. Are you coming over?" She's like, "No, I'm talking to Lindsay. Don't bother me right now." Well, this is like so she's a favorite.
That would have also been my answer in your defense.
Yeah,
right. Anyway, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that because I like LeBron, and part of that is we did the Derek, before you were with us, we did the spot with him.
Yep.
Where we did the commercial, and he was a total gentleman. This was back in his days with the Cavaliers the first time.
Wow.
But I don't know. I really haven't thought about that. I think it's a great question. I would probably be thinking back over time and saying, there were tennis greats that I liked. I loved Bjorn Borg because he was the Iceman. He never showed any emotion. I thought that was very cool back in the day.
I have a pair of his underwear from when I went to Sweden.
What?
do. They're Swedish flag colors. My friend Chris bought them as a joke, but it was Bjorn Borg. He has an underwear line that are actually very comfortable.
I'm not surprised in the slightest he has his own underwear line in Sweden.
I just can't believe that your boss is on our show.
Did it come with the headband?
It did not come with the headband. I had to make that. I had to cut my shirt sleeve off to make the headband while I was wearing it. What were you saying, Josh?
Yeah.
I was saying your boss is on our show, and yet you somehow slip in a Sweden reference.
Yeah, every show I slip in that I've been to Sweden, Scott. I want them all to experience life, and they need to go places, and I tell them where I've been.
I've been to Canada.
Same.
I do, and I even told Scott I've been to Sweden, so I was,
There you go.
he's
We've been to Canada. We've been places.
Yeah, I love it.
Just saying.
Love it.
Wonderful, Scott. Well, we are going to cut you off there and transition. But, Scott, again, thank you so much for reaching out to want to jump on. That means the world to us. And thank you just so much for being here with us. I think that it was definitely an aspect of Two Beers Deep that we have not really had on yet. So thank you for your insight and your stories, and we would love to have you back at any time.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks so much. I had a great time.
Thank you so
Scott,
much.
if you bump into PK, tell him I love him. I don't care if he's on the downside of his career.
Will do.
Thank you very much, Scott. Guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right